waves and walking on the water and the storms and the wind. We're going to be talking about that today. And I don't know if you've ever ridden a bicycle in the wind. Anyone ever ridden a bicycle in strong wind? It's the most miserable thing you can do, isn't it? It's just horrible. It's like it's almost as bad as riding uphill. I mean, it's bad. I played tennis in the wind once. Well, actually more than once. I lived in San Bernardino a little bit, and we would travel up to Barstow or Victorville, the high desert, where there's high winds a lot of times. And so we were up there and we were playing a tennis match. I don't remember if I was in high school or junior college, but we were playing a match up there, and it was so windy. I don't know what speed the winds were. It was just horrid. It was really bad playing tennis in the wind. You toss your ball up, and the wind blows it 3 feet over this way. Right? So every time you're trying to hit the ball, it's moving all kinds of different directions on you. And so it's really tough to play in the wind. Not the funnest tennis. Not the most fun. So it's not that either, yeah. So I was playing tennis, and so we're in this match, and we're playing doubles, and we're playing, and I hit the ball comes at me, and I hit this ball, and it shanks off the frame. It hits the frame instead of the strings. So it doesn't go that way, it goes that way. But it didn't just go straight up, it went that way. And the thing is, we were on the tennis court, I was over on the sideline when I hit the ball, and it went, and the fence is about where the front pew is. The fence, this tall fence in these tennis courts there, the ball goes outside the fence. It goes up, it takes off. It's like a foul tip in baseball. And the ball just, and it takes off, and it's going. I mean, it's going, at that angle, that way. And it went up like high as the ceiling. But it was probably, it went way outside the fence into the parking lot. And the wind blew it back over into the court. Not just over the fence, but back into the court. And it landed on the other side of the net. And I won the fight. Because we were all laughing so hard. The one time playing in the wind was good to me, right? But boy, struggling against the elements can be difficult. Struggling against the elements and the things that come against us can be difficult. I was rock climbing. I was younger. We went to a camp, and Christian camp, and we had a guest speaker, and he took us out rock climbing. He was a famous rock climbing explorer guy, and he had been in National Geographic and all this stuff, and he was our camp speaker. He took us out, and he had all the gear. We went to this rock to go rappelling. Not repelling, rappelling. Okay, so we're going to go down the side of this rock face, and he anchors us in, and he goes through the whole safety speech. He's connecting it to faith, and how you're going to have to trust. You have to trust the rope. You're going to have to trust that I've anchored you good. You're going to have to trust me because I'm going to tell you what to do, and you've got to trust. And so he did this whole thing, and I was, young and bold and fearless, And I went over the edge of that cliff, and I thought I was like a SWAT guy. I had that rope coming out the back there, and the rope coming. I was going down, bam, going down the side of this rock face, It was so amazing. And I was pretty hard on the girl that got stuck halfway down. She got over the edge and went halfway down, and then she was there for about an hour, petrified in fear. Wouldn't go up, couldn't go down. Trying to talk her down, and she just couldn't. I was frustrated because I didn't get a second turn. Right? Fast forward. My younger brother took me rock climbing. I don't know how many years ago now, a few years ago. And we went rock climbing, and he took me up top. I'm like, oh yeah, I've done this before. And he harnesses me in, everything, and I'm going to go over the edge. Now, when you go rock climbing, you're going to go over the edge. You have to step off the edge. So the edge is this precipice. There's not steps. It's straight down. It's like this. It's like you come to the edge, And you got the rope on you. And he's like, okay, lean back. Just lean back. Right? And so what you're supposed to do when you're rock climbing, I'll try not to kick it over, but you're out there on the rope, and then when you go over the edge, you're on the edge, and when you go, you gotta lean all the way back, all the way straight back, because you want to be totally horizontal. Now don't worry, I'm not gonna fall off the stool. Right? Don't worry about that. Right? If I do, it'll be a good laugh. Right? So so you have to be completely sideways. The rock face is here, straight up. There's nothing underneath it but death. I mean, it's, if you fall, if that rope breaks, you're dead. All right, you're way up there. But you have to be completely horizontal, parallel to the ground. And you got to lean like this. Now, your natural tendency is to want to do this. To want to be upright. Because that's what feels normal. But if you do that, what happens is your feet slip out and you face plant into the rock, and you get a nice bloody face. Knock your teeth out, break your nose, all that good stuff, concussion. So you want to fight your natural tendency to stand straight up. You have to force yourself to trust the rope and to go completely sideways. And then you gotta, go down the cliff. So I told my brother, oh yeah, I've done it before. And I got to that edge, and we kept counting down. I kept saying, wait a minute, not yet, wait a minute, not yet. And after about 20 minutes of me not getting the courage to step over the edge and to lean backwards, I said, you know what, maybe if we go down the bottom and I climb up, once I'm, then I'll be, I'll kind of be more ready to go over the edge. So I go down and I go to climb up. I couldn't get my courage to step out and to lean back over the edge, even though I had done it before. And so I go to climb up the rock face, and as I'm going to climb up the rock face, he's taking up the slack, I'm on belay, or whatever they call it, and he's taking up the slack, and so I'm anchored in and everything. I'm not free climbing. But I'm climbing up this rock face, and I'm stuck. I get to this one part, and I'm stuck. And he says, okay, Chris, he says, you see where see that little indentation to your right, over your right ear, over to the right of you, above your hand? I'm like, yeah, I see it. I'm thinking I'm going to reach over and grab it. He's like, okay, put your right foot up there in that indentation. He's like, just stick that right foot right up there. I'm like, are you kidding me? So anyway, I got up the rock face somehow, and then after I was up there, then it was easier to trust the rope because I had been on the leg and climbed up. It was easier than to lean back and to go back down. But man, the elements can come against you. It feels like it's when the elements come against you, it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel natural in those situations. Today we're going to talk a little bit about when things come against us and when things go wrong. And oftentimes when forces come against us and when things go wrong, when we try to do good, it seems like we fail. And I want to start off with this. I taught you this last week, and if you weren't here, learn it again right now. Remember this? God is good. All the time. You say all the time. And I say, and then some. Or we all say it and then some. Right? Let's try it again. God is good.
All the time.
And then some. All right. I heard a friend that he used to say, God is good, and I would say all the time. And then he would say all the time, and then the people would say, God is good. And then they would all say, and then some. Let's try it out. You ready? God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
And then some. So, in our lives, when things go wrong, when things happen, we often find ourselves asking the question, why? Sometimes we may have even contributed to the problem, but we still find ourselves asking, why did this happen? Yeah, I know I had my part in why I'm in this situation, but this seems pretty extreme. Why is this happening? Sometimes things happen to us. Things that we didn't have a part in, didn't have any control over. Things happen to us and we feel like God is absent. And so we ask, why? Sometimes bad things happen and we ask, why? The disciples of Jesus must have asked Jesus that question, why? If they didn't verbalize it out loud, they thought it sometimes. Why, Jesus? Have you ever found yourself asking that question, why, God? If you have, I know I have, and if you have, and maybe you're even asking that God that question lately in your life, today's message is for you. So listen up. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 14. Actually, we'll read it all day. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 36. Matthew 14:22. Matthew 14:22. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. We're going to work through the passage a little bit here, piece by piece. Today we're going to explore the power of God. Think about this question that we find ourselves asking sometimes. Why? We see at the beginning of the passage in verse 22, it says, immediately Jesus made them get into the boat. And I was wondering, you just read that, you want to know, why was Jesus so, why was he forcing them into the boat? Why was he constraining them to get into the boat? Like he was making them get in the boat. And why was there this urgency? It's that he immediately, Jesus told him to get into the boat. We can fill in that question by looking at the context and looking back at what happened before this. And we understand that he had just fed 5,000. So he had fed 5,000 men, plus the women and children that were there. And he had just turned loaves and a piece of bread and fish into meals for 5,000 plus. And so in John we see that the people there wanted to try and make him an earthly king, the Messiah that they were waiting for. They believed, hey, he can provide bread for anyone who's hungry all the time, And he can feed the armies, and we can overthrow the government, and he's got this kind of power. And so they were all excited, the people were excited about that. And we see here, we understand that Jesus wants his disciples to get into the boat to leave that situation. He wants them to leave. Jesus is not called to set up an earthly kingdom. He wasn't called to come and to feed everyone that was hungry on the earth, on the planet at that time. He wasn't there to heal everyone that was sick at that time. He did feed the hungry. He did heal the sick. Selectively and personally and all those things. But those were signs to point to the greater truth of who he was. And so we've been talking about that. But it says here, he made his disciples go ahead. He didn't want them to get caught up in the stir of and the idea of trying to make him an earthly king. So they get into the boat, and he sent them to go on ahead of him to the other side of the sea, the Sea of Galilee, which is really a giant lake. Right? While he dismissed the crowd. So Jesus stays back. He makes them get in the boat and shove off and cast away and go to the other side. I'll meet you over there. And then he's going to say goodbye to 5,000 plus people. And he dismisses the crowd and says goodbye to them. How long would it take to say goodbye to 5,000 plus people? Who want to come up and talk to you and everything else? I mean, imagine just a pastor standing at the door and 5,000 people trying to walk by and shake his hand as he walked out without any extended conversation, how long that would take. Right? So here's Jesus, and he's going to send the crowds away. I don't know exactly, we don't know how long it took him to dismiss the people and send them away. It says, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. So Jesus has been here, he's been in this crowd, these crowds of people, and they're all praising him and thinking about him being an earthly king, and that's not his mission. And then he breaks away. He says goodbye to all of them, and he breaks away, and he goes to a mountainside by himself to pray, to get refocused. It says, later that night, he was there alone. Yeah. So here he is. It was late in the day. Remember, it was late in the day when that feeding happened. And Jesus wanted the disciples to send all those crowds, the disciples wanted Jesus to send all those crowds away. And he said, I'm worried if I send those crowds away, they might faint on the road, and I'm worried about them. What do we have? Let's feed them. Right? And then Jesus multiplies the fish and bread and feeds them. So it was already late in the day. He feeds them all after that, sends the disciples away. Now it's late. It's probably sometime between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. He sends them away. And then later that night, he was there alone. He wants to make a big point about the fact that he's by himself to pray, and later that night, he's still alone. So there's no disciples with him, there's no people with him. He has spent some time alone with the Lord. Verse 24, the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. In the original language, it talks about a distance of stadia, many stadia, and the idea, the words used there, convey the fact that it was probably 3 or 4 miles out. The lake itself is about 8 miles across. So they're in the middle of the lake. They're in the middle of this lake, the Sea of Galilee. They're right in the middle, and straight across. And it's interesting that it's getting buffeted by the waves because the wind is against them. So they're going against the wind. They can't use the sail. They're rowing. They're rowing the boat. Right? And so they're rowing the boat into the wind, and they're not making much progress. They've been at it for hours. The time for Jesus to send the people away, the time for Jesus to go up on the mountain, and then later that night. We're talking like the third watch of the night. It's like 3 in the morning now. So now it's been like 6 to 8 hours that they've been on the lake. Trying to go 8 miles. And they've only gone about 4 in about 6 to 8 hours time. And the wind is against them. And it's buffeted by the waves, and the wind's against it. Shortly before dawn, so that's where we get the idea, the time frame, that now it's before dawn. It's sometime between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. They were terrified. What that means is their mind was agitated. They were terrified. Their mind was agitated, kind of like scrambled eggs. Right? It was kind of like in the spin cycle or the wash cycle of the washing machine. It scrambled their brains. They see a body, someone who's not supposed to be there, walking on a lake. There's a human figure walking on the lake toward them, and their mind can't comprehend it. Their mind can't wrap around it and take it in and understand it. It makes no sense. It goes against their comprehensions. Their minds were agitated. They were terrified. And so, here they are terrified, and they say, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. It's the only explanation they could come up with. It's a ghost! Right? If you have some kind of a demonic apparition appear to you in the lake, and you're pretty close to drowning in the lake, that's not a good thing. You know, that's not the time you want to see a demonic apparition, a ghost appear to you, and so they're freaking out. Right? This is not good. Right? It's going from bad to worse. But Jesus immediately said to them, and I like that. We have immediately. Again, the word immediately. Remember the passage started with that. Immediately, Jesus made it get in the boat. And here we go. Immediately, Jesus says to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." He doesn't just let them sit there and cry and stand there and laugh at them. I mean, he just look at them being, agitated and scared and in trouble. No, immediately, take courage, take courage. And, it's I, don't be afraid. Be of good cheer is another way to say take courage in the original language. He's saying, look, be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. Stop being scared. Stop being worried. Stop being terrified. Be of good cheer. That's a nice greeting, isn't it? Be of good cheer. Right? People might look at you funny. You can use that one, but I like it. Be of good cheer. It is I. Don't be afraid. So here they are on the boat. And now, what they thought was a ghost, what they think is a ghost, is talking to them. Saying, take courage, it's I, don't be afraid. Be of good cheer, it's I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come on the water. It always strikes me as funny because here he is, and it's like, well, it might be Jesus. It might not. Right? Lord, if it is you, it's like Peter's going to put him to the test. Right? It's like he's not sure if he's talking to a ghost or he's talking to Jesus. But Peter says, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come on the water. Jesus says, come. Right? My translation, come on with your bad self. Right? So, Peter gets down out of the boat. Peter gets down. Peter gets down out of the boat. He's got to climb out of the boat down to the water. He gets over the side of the boat and goes down to the water. Peter gets out of the boat. Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. And you've maybe heard this story before. Maybe you've heard it many times, and you thought you knew it. I hope you're seeing some things you didn't realize before. But things, Peter, walking on water, right? Here he is, walking on water. He's coming towards Jesus. He's walking on water. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. It's interesting that he saw the wind. He's walking on water. He's coming to Jesus. He's walking on water. And so here he is, but it says he saw the wind. He saw the forces that were against him. He saw the situation that he was had been in the middle of for 6 to 8 hours. He started to look back at that situation rather than realizing he was on the water with Jesus. And so here he is, and it says he saw the wind and he was afraid. He began to sink. The understanding of this phrase, he began to sink, is that he began to be submerged. I mean, he was about to be like totally under the water and engulfed and overlapped. So it's not just like he was sinking, it's like he was going down to the bottom. I mean, he was going to be a submarine. He was afraid and began to sink. Cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, another immediately. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. I like that. When you call out to Jesus, he's there. He's there immediately. Doesn't matter what situation you're in. He's there. He's with you. Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You could see Peter yelling and screaming, "Lord, save me!" And then he's grabbing for Jesus. "Lord, save me!" At those words, Jesus immediately stretches out his hand and grabs him. He caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Now here's the thing. Jesus didn't just grab him. It's like Peter was down the water. And Jesus didn't just grab his arm and then just walk him over the boat. When he grabbed his arm, Peter stand right back up on that water. So now he's not down the water. Jesus isn't like hanging on to him. He just grabbed his hand and now he's standing up again with Jesus. Jesus says, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When he says you have little faith, it means you have wimpy faith. You have an anemic faith. He says it's the idea of a little weak little child, kind of a weak little wimpy idea up here. So when Jesus says you have little faith, it's this idea of, oh, your faith is so wimpy. You have wimpy faith. Why did you doubt? Why did you doubt? Interesting, Jesus asked the question why. Jesus asks why. We always ask him, why, God? Here's the passage where Jesus asks why. Why? Why did you doubt? Right? And when they climbed into the boat, that means Peter had walked on the water. They were some distance from the boat still. So Jesus saves him from drowning, and together they walked back over the boat. Peter walked on water some more with Jesus. And they got back to the boat. They walked back to the boat. When they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. And those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." It's interesting that the wind died down. Right? The wind could have just kept going. Jesus had walked on water. He had shown he was greater than the forces of nature. He had shown his identity, revealed who he was, that he was creator, not subject to the creation and the laws of nature, but greater than. And so here he is, but he gets in the boat. And just to put an exclamation point, to make sure everyone understands what they just had experienced and seen, what the object lesson was about, when he gets in the boat, the winds completely stop. The waves calm. The wind dies down. And the people in the boat, truly, you are the Son of God. When they crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak. All who touched it were healed. Here's an idea of him coming. He comes to this place and the masses of people, the word goes out. They recognize Jesus and the word goes out. And all the sick come. Another multitude of people. A mass of humanity come to Jesus. And again, he's surrounded by tons of people. And there's so many people, he can't just have a meeting with each one individually. There's just all these people. And so they beg him, just let the sick come and just touch the fringe, the bottom edge of your robe. Just let them just touch a little tiny piece of thread on the bottom of your robe. And that'd be enough. Jesus' power is so great. Can you imagine? Just a little tiny touch heals completely. Imagine when Jesus fully grips you, when fully gets a hold of you. Well, I want you to understand today about the power. The power of God is greater than anything that we face. I'm going to pause real quick. Y'all hear the little rattle?
Yeah.
Don't be distracted. Smile to yourself. That's kids. At the end of their Sunday school time, they're getting a little 5-minute time in the bounce house. And rejoice. Rejoice. There's kids. What's the single most, I want you to know Jesus is greater than your questions. He's greater than your doubts. Find yourself asking why. Think about it. Peter's own faith, his own wimpy faith, was against him, that Jesus saves with power. How can we have stronger faith? I think we have to understand the disciples had why questions when they should have been asking what. So that's what I want to suggest to you. The disciples could have asked Jesus, why do you force us to go ahead of you? They might have asked that to themselves. And Jesus' answer might have been, I want you to trust me. If they had said, what are you doing? He might have been able to say, I want you to trust me. The disciples might have asked, why did you send us into the storm? If they had asked, what are you doing? He might have been able to explain to them, they might have understood that he wants the faith to be proven and tested. And he wants to teach them something about the power of God. They might have asked Jesus, why are you scaring us to death? When he appears to them on the water. And he might have answered, if they had asked, what are you doing? He might have tried to explain, I'm beyond your comprehension and the limitations you place on me. I'll show up at unexpected places, in unexpected ways. They might have asked, why are you walking on water? And they should have said, what do you want us to learn? My answer, I'm walking on water because I can. I'm the creator. I'm not subject to the law of creation or creation and its laws. I'm the creator. I am God. The disciples in the boat, think about that. They might ask, why'd you let Peter walk on the water? He might have answered, he's the only one that had enough faith, even though it was windy. He at least had some faith to ask him to get out on the water. The rest of y'all didn't get out of the boat. You stayed in the boat. Peter got out of the boat. That's why he got to walk on the water. Why did the storm stop when you got in the boat, Jesus? I want you to completely understand the full message of what just happened. So, for us today, what do I want us to do? I want us to think about changing our why question to what. Instead of asking why, God, why am I going through this? Why? I want you to say, God, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to show me about yourself? And I want you to realize that if you have a relationship with Jesus, that He's with you. He's with you in the storm. All you do is cry out to Him. And then walk with Him in the storm. He may not pull you out of the storm you're going through, but He'll be with you. He'll be with you in it. And He has something for you to learn about Him, about Himself. Look back on the storms you faced in your life. What have you learned about God and faith through what you've already experienced in the past? So maybe remember that. But I want you to really challenge yourself. When you find yourself asking that question, why, God? Start asking what? God, what? Why is not productive? The only one who really asks, should be able to ask why, should be Jesus. God can ask you why you doubt. Why do you doubt? Why do you doubt that I'm good? Why do you doubt that I'm at work? Why do you have wimpy faith? Ask Him what. What are you doing? What do you want to teach me? We're going to close by singing, I Surrender All and Ask